Everybody, it's Tbone here, and I'm here to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, the game that created many games and many minds, the game that helps people, like social distance. Like, you think, oh yeah, it's a tabletop game that you only can have fun at the table. But, matter of fact, it's not that. It's actually far from it. It's a game that you can have fun on Discord, through other apps like Messenger. And there's even a website called Roll20 that helps you even set up a campaign and play on that. There's been many YouTubers that made live streams on that. But I'll be talking about why this game is the best game of all time. This game created many games, but also seen the birth of a new type of game, such as role-playing games. Yes, you know RuneScape. Yes, this is RuneScape. Even though it's not an online version, far from it, but still, it's RuneScape. You see people roleplay on that, trying to get certain equipment, trying to better themselves. But you do see people roleplay on that. It's a roleplay type game. Wizard 101. That's a little bit of newer game. It's another role-playing game. And each of the games I have mentioned so far are role-playing games. You roleplay. And you try having fun. But let's see, like, this helped create games like Assassin's Creed. Yeah, you probably don't even see, like, this game being used to create that game, but still, it was. That's how it was created. Like, it helped. Through many factors, D&D has helped create games. Probably not exactly like Dungeons and Dragons, but still similar. Like, let's see here. Let's just take Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings have created D&D as the tabletop. Like, even though there's been many fights on who owns Hobbit or Halfling, depending on where you come from, but still there's fights on that till this day. Fights on who owns that name or that race. And it's hard to believe that we're still fighting about that such of things. Like, to some degree, I think even Lord of the Rings helped create such books like Harry Potter. Like, you have to think, it's not like just one game. Sometimes this game can lead to other games or another thing. So technically, if you want to be technical, Lord of the Rings has created, well, all role-playing games. Like, it's hard to say, but that is part of it. Like, when you play a campaign of, like, let's say you go to Call of Duty, and you try wanting to play the campaign, see how it runs, and if you're gonna like it. Like, I think that's what some people do, not all. And you're role-playing without even knowing. They set missions up. That's a campaign right there. And it takes hours sometimes because, well, you die on some missions. And then you have to restart that process, or luckily you have a checkpoint and stuff like that. Final Fantasy was, well, created near the same time as Dungeons and Dragons, but it helped create, well, Final Fantasy products. Like, you probably don't see it right off the bat because everyone thinks Dungeons and Dragons is just fantasy. But it not always is fantasy. Sometimes it can be fantasy, but sometimes not. This game, though, helps you in many ways, not just, well, making a game. Like, it teaches you the best storytelling aspects. Stuff that we don't really see as, we see as dialogue that is boring. But in Dungeons and Dragons, you can make that boring dialogue into something that's inspirational. Like, if you have a real good dungeon master, that person can lead you on many campaigns in his time of doing your campaign. Like, it probably will get boring at times, but still, that's every game. I think if you play every game that you played, you'll realize each game somewhat does get boring. But in a certain amount of time of playing that game. Like, let's look at this picture, for example. UC has all these characters, all with different weapons, different looks. Like, we have our wizard in the middle here. I'm not sure if I have it on touch. No, I don't. But our wizard is right there. And that's how he dresses. That's his armor. But then you might have cleric, and I'm actually not sure who's the cleric. I think it might be, well, I don't know, but there's a paladin, a fighter. There's actually probably a few fighters and magic users. Like, Dungeons and Dragons is something that you create. You could just as easily make a story as, well, anything, really. Like, I know, like, I'm just gonna say how this game helped me and my friends connect better than, well, sometimes as we ever have. Like, sometimes I feel like Dungeons and Dragons makes our friendship even stronger. Honestly, I think this game women would love if they would give it a chance. But, well, let's face it, everyone thinks, oh, boring book. No one wants to read that thick book. But in reality, that thick book can be Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. Like, we have to look at it as that, where it can turn into something amazing. Not something like boring. Yeah, there are rules to making a character. There's rules to everything. In most video games, though, our character's already made. We don't choose really the stats. We choose how it looks. Yeah, maybe that person might have a little bit more strength to him because he's a fighter or that. But in, like, that's a RuneScape. Like, you might have proficiency with some weapons, but with some weapons it will be useless to you, so you might as well sell those weapons. That's Dungeons & Dragons. You actually, if your campaign runs long enough, your character could vary in weaponry, even though they weren't first proficient in them. But let's say, like, your character was a swords master, and he was only proficient in swords. Like, long swords and, like, heavy weaponry of swords, basically. Then, he finds a knight, and in every, like, start of the campaign, and this guy joins your group for a bit. Let's say for the first, like, next 5 sessions, that character helps train your character how to use spears, a bow, maybe. Like, honestly, I like to, like, tell my DM that, hey, I'm going to give my character less proficiencies because, well, it'll make it overall more challenging to play this character, but more fun. Because, well, let's face it, you think a character will be good at everything off the get-go, might have that 1 or 2 things about him or her that will truly shine. That is what we should look at, not other features that we tend to look at. And there's more to Dungeons & Dragons than just rolling a dice. That dice chooses if you succeed or fail. Like a D20, a 20-sided die, you roll, and there's a chance of you failing. And in video games like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed, like I've been bringing those two up, you do fail at some of your missions, but you get a retry. In Dungeons & Dragons, there is no retry. You die. There is something like a retry, but it's making a brand new character. So let's say like first time you played a paladin. Well, let's say you chose a paladin wasn't best suited for you, like what you were trying to do. So you make a brand new character, but let's say wizard. Like you want to have a smarter character overall. A paladin is smart, but not as smart as a wizard would be, in my opinion. Many people would probably differ in that opinion, but that's my opinion on that. But a wizard, though, learns spells, and you start off with a few spells. And when I DM, I found out a lot of my players like to take time to learn their spells. Like, so I will give them chances after they level up, or after like we finish our current mission. I'll give them a chance to learn new spells. Like, if they do not learn a new spell in a certain amount of time, like, I'll give them, like, we'll play 1 hour of trying to learn new spells and all that, because I usually play with 5 people at the table. And that's kind of hard. And that, if you count, that's, 12 minutes per person, 1 hour. So it makes them speed up their choosing process, but at the same time, it makes the game a lot more interesting. Like, you could spend years in-game time, but in Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed, as you progress in the story, that's how many years you progress. Your character changes itself as the story progresses. Your story is already figured out, but in Dungeons & Dragons, it's a lot more of a creativity in the subject. And then there's creatures, beasts that will kill you. And in Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed, you're trying to hunt down the Templars. There are these vicious people that will dispose of people that they don't like. Real easy, right? And they don't care if they do 1 or 2. They'll do thousands to have order and law. While the assassins prefer chaos. And actually, the assassins in a way are evil. As you're an assassin, you actually do not think you're the bad guy. They portray you as a good guy. But in reality, even the good guys have to do bad. And that's hard to say. Like, let's see. But anyways, it's not always good or bad. And honestly, creativity can make you do many things in Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it can make you, like, find out, like, you're good at drawing or something. Or make you, like, want to be good at drawing, so you practice. You might want to become a dungeon master and become better at dungeoning and all that. You want to create the story. And I don't think, each of these games took Dungeons & Dragons to heart, because, let's say, Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed are not fantasy games. But here's the thing. I have seen people play Pokemon Dungeons & Dragons. I've seen people play of a more zombie apocalypse, doomsday Dungeons & Dragons. Like, I've seen many people do many different types of games. In a way, They're playing with a world already created. And worries me a little because when I am a dungeon master, I want to give my players a world that I created. Yeah, there might be a few gods that are, well, in this world that in most Dungeons and Dragons worlds, but still, not every god. And my worlds are very high maintenance. Like, to make sure my characters are doing everything right. And honestly, when my characters are building a character, I will say, if they ask me a question like, hey, is there racism in your world? I like putting real life topics into my game. And I say, yes, there is. Like, whenever I picture a game, I picture racism being a huge part of it. Either a small or a huge part. And in Dungeons and Dragons, well, there should be racism. Like, I know racism is a bad thing, but still, like, it's an old world. You think a dwarf would like a halfling going into their hideouts or that? Or their whole stronghold that they're mining constantly that they could steal? Like, I have stuff like that, and I usually do the bigger changes in, well, where doors will get along, like most races get along with humans, but races like tieflings and all that do not get along with humans. Mostly because humans treat them as demons. SMRs are usually treated as more of a godly creature, I picture. So that's how I portrayed that race in itself. More godly. Or more devilish, depending on what subrace of SMR you chose. And all that. Like, I'm not sure on the whole thing with tieflings, I mean. Sorry if I bugged anyone, but still. There's a lot of features that are in games that I love quite a lot, but not everyone uses. So that's part of it. And do I have? Nope, I do not have another picture there. But I will show you when I'm dating my girlfriend. She and me love Dungeons and Dragons. The issue is, she works when I don't. I work when she doesn't. Like, so it's very difficult to get a day off. But recently, we've been trying to get together for even 1 hour to just talk, like calling or texting. But to make, and I was expecting to go to prom this year, like most seniors were. So I done a Dungeons and Dragons theme, well, promposal. And this is what is. And I'm like the most scary things in Dungeons and Dragons, and I think, yeah, there we go. This one's actually the completed one. I realized I didn't put things, so I put it. And I'm like, third is a kraken. Second is dragons. First is asking you to prom. And will you be my dragon to prom? Yeah, yes, fuck yes. I put 3 questions there, like answers. I got so many responses on one D&D topic group on Facebook, and they all loved it. They gave me some weird comments too. But I put a few miniatures, and I put 2 dragon heads right there. I'm like, I thought this was actually a really cool, clever idea. Putting my love of Dungeons and Dragons and her love of Dungeons and Dragons into asking her to prom. And this is a quarter of a fraction of what Dungeons and Dragons does. Like, I know some people would probably not really get that, but still, Dungeons and Dragons actually helped my girlfriend because she struggles with showing emotion at some points and like actually verbalizing it. Dungeons and Dragons made it easier with role playing. And in a way, back in the 80s where Dungeons and Dragons was demonized, a lot of people realized they loved the game, but their parents didn't. There are many reasons. You can search up Dungeons and Dragons and the panic. But anyways, that's T-Bone. Tbone Talk is done. And hopefully you all enjoy Dungeons and Dragons one day. Peace.